The views expressed on the Final Straw Radio do not necessarily reflect those of Asheville FM, Friends of Community Radio, or any of the affiliate radio stations airing the show. From the studios of WSFM-LP 103.3 in Asheville, North Carolina, this is The Final Straw, and I'm Burso Goodness. This show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with suggestions or questions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment, you're free to do so. Just send us an email to let us know. You can find radio-friendly versions of the show of 59 minutes in length by visiting archive.org and searching for the collection called The Final Straw. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, care of Asheville FM, 864 Haywood Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806. This show is brought to you by Firestone Books and Coffee, located at 610 Haywood Road. Firestone Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop. This week on The Final Straw, we air 2 interviews. In the first segment, we hear from 2 organizers from the Centro de Apoyo Mutuo, or Mutual Aid Center in Caguas, Puerto Rico. Emilu and Kique talk about Caguas, about the colonial relationship between the U.S. mainland and Puerto Rico, the post-hurricane disaster relief that they've been doing as a continuation of social organizing in the wake of that colonialism, and building a network of CAMs around Puerto Rico. More info on their project can be found by going onto Facebook and searching Centro de Apoyo Mutuo Caguas, that's C-A-G-U-A-S. Then we hear from Camille, a resident of the ZAD in Notre-Dame-des-Landes in western France. Camille shares the news about the recent French government statement that they are canceling the planned airport at NDDL, which has been the goal of social movements and land occupation at the ZAD. More info on that project can be found at zad.nadir.org, that's zad.nadir.org. Also, tomorrow, January 22nd, is the 3rd annual Trans Prisoner Day of Action and Solidarity as initiated in 2016 by eco-anarchist prisoner Marius Mason. Last year's call-out, plus a list of some events around the U.S. can be found at It's Going Down. If you're in Asheville, Transmission Prison Project will be hosting a card signing event and discussion at 7 p.m. at Firestone Books and Coffee. Cards will be supplied, and it's suggested that people might want to bring vegan snacks to share.
The heat is on. An update from the Blue Ridge Anarchist Black Cross on week 1 of Operation Push. 1 week ago, prison rebels across Florida launched Operation Push. Their demands were simple: end prison slavery and price gouging, restore access to parole, and put an end to the brutal conditions they are subjected to daily. Information has been slow to trickle out due to intense repression and communication blackouts, but we know there has been strike participation at 15-plus prisons, and we know that support on the outside is growing, with 150-plus organizations endorsing the action and major solidarity actions in Florida occurring at various locations, including a 5-hour-long occupation of the DOC office in Tallahassee on Tuesday. The repression is already starting to come down. People being thrown into solitary confinement, being threatened with violence, being bribed to end their action and inform on the other strike organizers, being transferred to new facilities to disperse strike activity throughout the system and isolate people. One disturbing feature of this repression is DOC's focus on identifying specific groups coordinating support on the outside, such as the Campaign to Fight Toxic Prisons and IWalk, and disrupting prisoners' communication with these groups. Prison organizers who correspond with these groups are being targeted for having their security threat level increased, a practice that translates into greater isolation and harsher conditions of confinement. One prisoner was told point blank, quote, "As long as you communicate with these people, you're always going to be labeled a security threat and you're always going to be put under investigation," end quote. Communication has been curtailed so severely that it's hard to know how much of an economic impact the strike has had so far. We do know that in some cases, scab labor has been brought in to keep facilities running. The state of uncertainty is a strategy prison administrators use to sap organizing energy. As IWalk recently wrote, quote, "A common theme among reportbacks is the attempt to sever communication in order to create the perception of inactivity and break the spirits of those participating in the strike," end quote. But strikers won't be fooled so easily, and neither will we. We will keep showing up because those on the inside are putting it all on the line, and we are in absolute solidarity with their courageous acts of resistance. Now is the time to step up support. There will be a letter writing to striking prisoners today. That is January 21st, 2018 at Firestorm at 4 p.m. You can also join the Phones app calling campaign tomorrow, Monday, the 22nd. You can go to incarceratedworkers.org to find the call script and make those calls. And as always, you can tell people about this. They can follow the hashtags Operation Push and End Prison Slavery to see updates.
A third Charlottesville A12 counter-protester was arrested. Mr. Donald Blackney was arrested at his home on Friday by Charlottesville PD. He is charged with malicious wounding, a felony that carries a 5-year minimum and the possibility of up to 20 years in prison. On August 12th, he was physically attacked by a participant in the Unite the Right rally, who also yelled racist slurs at him. Later that fall, he was questioned by CPD and the FBI under the pretext of an ongoing criminal investigation into right-wing violence that day. Charges against Mr. Blackney are apparently based in part on a video broadcast by the ABC News program 2020 that depicts him at the scene. Mr. Blackney is the third counter-protester to be arrested and charged arising out of the events of Charlottesville on August 12, 2017. Corey Long and DeAndre Harris are both also facing criminal charges. All three are black men and local residents who were attacked that day. Mr. Blackney was released on personal recognizance on Friday. He also has an arraignment tomorrow, Monday, January 22nd at 10 a.m. in Charlottesville at the General District Court and is requesting supporters come in solidarity. Mr. Blackney is represented by the attorneys Sandra Freeman and David Bow.
Yesterday marked the year anniversary of January 20th, 2017. The by now all too familiar litany of charges, events, numbers, police tactics, and trials sometimes bears repetition, but at other times can obscure the human element at play, lives that have been varying degrees of upended or lost in this process. 3 days ago, on January 18th, 2018, 129 of the original defendants were acquitted of all charges, without prejudice, a phrase that sounds benign and even somewhat positive. In actuality, it is in place here to protect the plaintiff, in this case the state, from the defendant, here the 129, invoking a doctrine called res judicata, meaning a thing decided in Latin, which essentially states that someone cannot be brought up on charges for the same thing twice. I think it's important to belabor this point, not in any way to naysay the relief that anyone may be feeling right now or diminish some very, very well-deserved congratulations, but to say again and again that the state is not here to give anyone who opposes it relief or joy or a sense of justice. The daily realities of so many of us who resist the state by our actions, beliefs, or our very existence is proof enough of the state's essential nature. This phrase, without prejudice, when used in the case of a dismissal of charges, means legally that the original charges could be brought again at any time, as though those charges never existed in the first place. This is a very smart move on the part of the courts. It seems likely that this was a carefully timed mass acquittal, having little or nothing to do with meting out so-called guilt or innocence, and everything to do with attempting to fracture support and stymie momentum. They can be seen to be throwing us a bone while actually going ahead with their original intention. What is unfortunate for the courts is that support for the J20 defendants is not being taken in by this tactic. This is a time for us to focus all our resources on the remaining 59 defendants, keep an eye or two on the shenanigans of the court trying to pull legal fast ones over on our comrades, and taking care of ourselves and each other because this is far from over. You can see a beautiful statement of solidarity with the remaining defendants at defendj20resistance.org. And as always, keep up with the developments in this case by following the hashtags or handles defendj20 on all your fave social media platforms. To see a list of actions and endeavors on this anniversary week, You can go to itsgoingdown.org and search Build the Base, Week of Solidarity and Outreach. And now here are some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? We'll call like a
I have a serious proposal to run past you for a project that really has to happen. I've already gotten a pledge for the land and buildings to make it happen. My idea is called the Treaty of Greenville Museum and Historical Park. It would be located right here in Ohio, and its purpose would be to educate the world on the real history of Ohio's colonization and statehood. It would be a kind of interactive experience with Ohio history. Let me walk you through my vision of how it would go. As you enter the historical park, you would be greeted by a First Nations person who would ask you a few questions about your ancestry. Those people who identify as being white or descending from Europeans would be handed a gift bag and would be provided a lovely woven blanket. Nobody else gets these amenities but white people. You are then led into a museum where you enter the display entitled Famous White War Criminals. Here, a guide explains how colonizers streamed into the area called Ohio and how their encroachment drove off the game on which the tribal owners of the land subsisted, so that as the number of settlers increased, the children of tribal people faced the real possibility of starvation. The guide will then describe how the military excursions undertaken decimated the native landowners. It is my hope that the guide can walk you from display to display. The first would have the actual remains of General Josiah Armour, his bones wired together and dressed in the military gear of his time, seated on a horse, his sword covered in blood. To put him on display like that, we'd have to dig up his grave the way white people routinely dig up First Nations graves. Historically, even the Smithsonian has treated Native American remains as exhibits, so it would be okay, I think, to drape General Josiah Harmar's carcass over the back of a plastic horse. You know, for history. The next display, if we're lucky, would have the remains of General Mad Anthony Wayne, for whom Fort Wayne, Indiana is named. Mad Anthony Wayne slaughtered First Nations people and forced the survivors to sign the Treaty of Greenville. So, in my vision, we wire up his bones and put them in a uniform and prop him up on a chair in front of a desk, with a clue in his hand as he signs the treaty, surrounded by plastic victims. Again, putting corpses on display isn't vulgar. White folks do it all the time. Each display will have some general statistics like estimates of how many people each white war criminal slaughtered. Then you step out into a makeshift village reenactment. In the first village you encounter, there's seemingly not much happening. Mostly folks just laying around, sweating and delirious. This is the smallpox village, designed to show you how hundreds of thousands died as a consequence of smallpox-infected blankets. The first documented use of biological warfare to commit deliberate genocide. When it comes to biological warfare to commit genocide, Ohio was number one. At the edge of this village, beyond the residential spaces, you'll encounter a pile of what appears to be corpses. Women, the elderly, babies. And to make them seem even more real, we can pile the fake corpses over pig blood and organs to draw flies and contribute to the intolerable stench. As you leave the smallpox village and take a path through the woods, you arrive at a second village that represents the Treaty of Greenville era. You see peaceful tribal people playing with their children, fixing food, caring for one another. Then you hear the hooves of the horses, and the peaceful tribal people run to their shelters, while some grab weapons. And then the soldiers come and overwhelm the village, hacking folks to death. Soldiers leap from their horses and chase down some of the women, pounding them in the face and enlisting other soldiers to hold the women down as they climb on top of them, the women screaming. Here and there you see soldiers running about with what appear to be babies skewered on their fixed bayonets, fake sausage intestines flapping in the breeze, smoke rising from the living spaces. In the midst of this, the tour guide will explain that this is how Ohio was settled. We might even have a display on the Ohio State House and how it was built by prisoner slave labor, and how the justice system was used to frame up carpenters, bricklayers, and folks from all of the skilled vocations to get the State House built. By my vision, at the exit, a First Nations person will present a bowl to all of the white folks who accepted gift bags, and will ask them to put their keys in the bowl. The First Nations person will explain that by accepting the gift bag of beads, those white folks agreed to turn over their cars and homes. So, they put their keys in the bowl. Then, as everyone is led to the parking lot, the First Nations person explains how, in our current culture, we no longer inoculate for smallpox. So those blankets handed to all the white people is the First Nations paying them back. They can buy T-shirts from the gift shop on the way out. I went to the Treaty of Greenville Museum, and all I got was a smallpox-infected blanket. My thinking is we can sell the cars and homes to keep the museum open. Given the mortality rate of smallpox, most of those folks won't be using those houses and cars anyway. So not only is this an effective plan for teaching Ohioans their true history, it really becomes a tool for reversing that history. This is anarchist prisoner Sean Swain from War and Corruption in unceded Indian Territory. If you're handing smallpox blankets back to the colonizer, you are the resistance.
You can write to Sean Swain at Sean Swain, 243-205, Warren CI, P.O. Box 120, 5787 State Route 63, Lebanon, Ohio, 45036. Updates on his situation and more writings by Sean can be found at seanswain.org.
I'm speaking with Emilu and Kique, organizers from the Centro de Apoyo Mutuo in Caguas. In the aftermath of the devastation of Hurricane Irma and Maria this year, community-based, autonomous, self-organized relief efforts sprang up around Boriquen, known by its colonial name of Puerto Rico. I'm hoping to learn more as we chat about mutual aid efforts in Caguas in the central mountains of Puerto Rico. Could you all please introduce yourselves and tell listeners how you got involved in this project?
Well, yeah, my name is Emilu, and well, I think right after Maria, so you should know that some people involved in this project has been working already since some years ago with other projects, community-based projects, and we knew each other from those projects. Especially a project called Comedores Sociales de Puerto Rico, and it is organized by that. It's an initiative of an organization called Centro para el Desarrollo Político, Educativo y Cultural, from which we are members. We participate in that organization. So after Maria, for me personally, some of us are original from Caguas. So after Maria, we decided to look for each other, and we needed to do something. We needed to do something, react in front of the crisis, and we needed to do something for the hunger and the poverty that was just unveiled with Maria. That was something that was already there, but we needed to work quick. And so yeah, that's how we mostly got involved in this project. We got together and we decided to do something. And at the 8th day after Maria, we started to give food.
So in my case, my name is Kique Garcia, and I started working with ZAD almost since its beginning. And, ZAD are the letters of the organization that is leading the efforts of the Centro de Apoyo Mutuo. That organization has been dealing with hunger to draw awareness of hunger in the country, because as you may know, or some people know, that we have been sailed as the showcase of America in 1952, and we were used as a political token against Cuba. Like there's another path that people, the countries could choose. There's an alternative to communism, and that alternative to communism was the showcase of America, Puerto Rico. That was the token that the U.S. Imperial used us during the 50s. So for almost every country, when they saw us, they didn't saw the hunger of colonialism. So so the project Comedores Sociales that started in 2013 was the main goal was to visualize the hunger that existed in the showcase of America. So that experience gave us a base to immediately, in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, to put up together a soup kitchen, because we had already that experience. So it was naturally for me that in the aftermath, when some colleagues and comrades of ZAD called me to start a soup kitchen in Caguas, I say yes, and we started 8 days after the stroke of Hurricane Maria.
Was some of the showcasing also in response to the independence movement in Puerto Rico? Because Puerto Rico by that time had only been an American colony specifically for, 60 years, 50 years, and was facing a very, very active independence movement from within, to separate itself as an internal colony and have autonomy as a series of islands. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Because, for instance, the Nationalist Party, they obtained representation in the United Nations in 1945. So, as an alternative to that, the U.S. imperialism started moving the game in favor of the Cold War politics, and that was creating the Commonwealth, the political and economic regime that we lived since 1952 that is still a colony, but it's a disguised colony.
And it was said once, just to jump back, but CDP stands for Centro de Desarrollo Political. Is that right?
Político, educativo y cultural.
Okay, can you translate that for listeners who speak primarily English?
Yeah, it's like Center for the Political, Educational, and Cultural Development.
So shifting a little bit, can you tell listeners what Caguas is like? Like, what kind of people live there? How did the storm affect people there? And what sorts of aid, if any, has the city seen from official sources?
Geographically speaking, Caguas is a valley, like center east of the island. There are only 2 valleys, so we're one of the valleys and we're one of the biggest city of the island. How do Caguas got affected? Like most of the island, there was quite a lot of destruction and a lot of people that lost their homes. A lot of floods, mostly like most part of the island.
And infrastructure.
Yeah, a lot of infrastructure damage. What kind of people live in Caguas? I think Caguas is very different kinds of people, like from very different social strata. Mostly in the center of the city, I think there's quite a lot of poor people, of a community of very low income. And in the outskirts of Caguas, being from Caguas, I can say that there's like a gap from people who live in the center of Caguas or near the center of Caguas, and that is more working class people. And the outskirts of Caguas, that are people mostly from private neighborhoods and a little bit more wealthy people. So it's quite varied.
Yeah, and Caguas usually it was a countryside. It was a peasant town, and it was rapidly, very fast developed into a suburban city. So you have a lot of suburban sprawl because Caguas is the town, the town next to the capital, San Juan. So it has a lot of the bad behavior that it repeats from the city. You know, that suburban sprawl. So that have made Caguas like it changed its face very rapidly. So like you have people that still has that memory of Caguas being a peasant town. That suddenly and very fast it changed its face to a city or to a suburban city, but the infrastructure is not quite good as it's not quite a city because you depend too much of the automobile. So it's a mess. To put it in simple words, it is a mess. Like most of the cities around Puerto Rico.
And you mentioned that there was a lot of infrastructure damage. Has there been much official aid to rebuild, like downed power lines or disruptions in water or any of these telecommunications, any of these other, for being one of the largest cities and being like, in a way, maybe a suburb of San Juan, the capital, has there been very much follow through by the authorities or by industry to sort of like pick it back up?
No, well, 4 months after Maria, we're still waiting for the mayor to give space, like to talk to people. 4 months after Maria, we're still waiting for all the debris they haven't picked up, all the debris from the streets. 4 months after Maria, we're still waiting for most of Caguas, like half of Caguas is still waiting for electricity. And 4 months after Maria, there's still people that haven't been visited nor helped by FEMA, people that have lost their homes completely. So I don't think we haven't seen a lot of the municipality nor the state.
You have seen some in the valley, but like Emilu said, Caguas is a valley surrounded by mountains. People that live in the mountains, they don't have received any or little help. Most of the help have been concentrated in the valley, and really in the center of the valley. That means the center of the valley is what you call in the U.S. downtown. So in downtown Caguas, you have seen a little bit of movement to repair the broken lines of electricity and to reestablish the water connections and all that. But up in the mountains, when you start going outside the downtown, the things are different.
Yeah, I guess that tends to make sense in terms of how I've seen just in general how anyone responds to, or any institutions respond to storms or like disasters, is it tends to focus on the areas of concentration of wealth and then disperse. Like we've had a few emergencies up here in the mountains of Appalachia that I'm aware of, where there have been, say, spillages from coal processing plants into local rivers, and then it's polluted the local water supplies, and then some of the cities have been able to get some relief in West Virginia, for instance, or in Virginia, where bottled water's brought in, but then up in the hollers where people, poor people live, elders live day to day, like having difficulty transiting themselves and definitely don't have very much money or political push, don't actually see any results of relief efforts. It's also harder to get to them, but that's often the people most in need.
It's mostly the same here.
It's mostly the same here, but making the point that in the wealth areas, like in the downtown, you still have pockets of poverty, and those pockets of poverty, they have been abandoned. Like the Centro de Apoyo Mutuo, in which we work, is in downtown, but the population that we attend are people that comes from those pockets of poverty in downtown. Neighborhoods that have not been visited by any authority.
So that's one thing that seems really amazing about the work that y'all are participating in, is is that you're doing for selves. And as you said before, this isn't the beginning of your work. You've worked with CDP and other initiatives in the past and are coming together and using those skills and those energies. Pictures from y'all's Facebook page show a diversity of activities at the Centro de Apoyo Mutuo in Caguas. Who is involved in the CAM, which translates into English as a Center for Mutual Aid, and what does the day-to-day look like there?
Well, since the proposal of Center of Mutual Aid is that people can get together and organize themselves as a community, in the camp, the people that are involved, apart from some coordinators or facilitators like us, are people from the community, people that started by coming and eating here and then understood the political and the social objectives and perspectives of the center and wanted to work here. So most of the people that are involved in the project are people from Caguas, from the pueblo. So yeah.
See, so like our politics is not giving fish to people. It's teaching people how to fish, so they can eat forever. Giving them skills to self-organizing. It's not only assisting them or giving them services. It's integrating them to the self-organizing work, so that we as a collective working together could resolve our problems, our needs, and not waiting for any authority to do it for us.
Somehow it's like working together to self-govern ourselves, like to be sufficiently self-organized to feel not just our basic needs, but starting with them.
Like that seems, from what I've heard from friends that have traveled to Puerto Rico before, like a systematic, like an approach to taking the opportunity of the storm and the disaster that's accompanied it and this disruption to sort of disrupt the normal for Puerto Rico, which like food production for Puerto Rico is pretty low, right, compared to consumption. A lot of it tends to be imported, and I'd imagine that a lot of the farmland in Puerto Rico is saved for exports for like sugar. And
a lot of the land is being saved for companies like Monsanto. So lots of lands are being sold to companies that are not taking care of our land and that are exploiting and abusing of our land with the excuse of feeding people, and none of that is going on. It's just a little bit more of a colonial treatment to the land, to the soil, and to people living in the surroundings.
So it seems like the effort towards like autonomy and autogestion, like for self-organizing of yourselves for your own needs, would sort of circumvent a little bit, to some degree, the colonial relationship that you have with the United States. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk about like what kind of workshops or what kind of skill sharing happens at the space, and what kind of like distribution? I would imagine bottled water and food, for instance. You mentioned that you're cooking right now. What sort of events are happening there, and what sort of popular education is coalescing around the Centro de Apoyo Mutuo?
The main service that we work on is food, but in the process of cooking that food and serving that food, there's a whole process of decision making decisions collectively, And in working together, putting to work together, people with many different backgrounds and many prejudices and different upbringings creates conflict. So in the way in which we deal with those conflicts is that's the kind of political work that you don't see much. It's not something that you could measure, but it has a profound impact in the person, because we prefer to work with the subject of change instead of taking power and making changes from upside to the bottom. It's more working changes from the bottom, little changes, in the way we deal with each other, the way we talk of each other, and the discrimination and the gender violence, for instance, that kind of conduct and behavior that comes from capitalism. So, it's not about ideology. It's more about behavior.
Like we're insisting in changing a culture of working, a culture of relating to each other, a culture of health behaviors, and in that sense, it's a grassroots. It's the word made it's a full grassroots work. Completely convinced that we can change ourselves and the way we relate to each other, and that we can relate to each other in a very horizontal, tender, loving, and equal way in order to make a political transformation. That's some of the ways of working here.
And from the food, we are just now working with health, using a more humane approach to health and a less expensive approach to health, using acupuncture on the ear, auriculotherapy. We now have 1 day of health clinics, and where we attend, people that usually came to eat. So now we also attending them to work with their health.
Yeah, we try to do some workshops. Like I think Kique told something about it. We've been giving workshops on gender violence, and we have some other workshops in agenda about self-defense and about nonviolent communication. And so that's some things that we have been working on.
So, it seems like both materially and socially, you're trying to help the community heal itself by offering these things. It's not coming in and trying to using a Western modality of just coming in and setting bones and fixing things with force and trying to force people into, as you said, an ideology or a program, but facilitating the kind of relationships that people can start a better health, an approach towards personal health. I think food is a really cool approach, not only in terms of how you're preparing it collectively and then using that space to discuss and share ideas and work on each other and really open people up to, I know outside of the professional framework, at least in the mainland United States, cooking is considered a feminized job. And for community members to partake in that of all different genders, that sort of breaks down some boundaries, and that also allows people to come into the same space and have these frank conversations and also see each other eye to eye and maybe get over some of the misperceptions that misogynist society teaches us to have about each other, and what kind of work is valorized, what kind of work is appreciated versus what is like, menial and domestic. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
The left has always had this discourse of we have to work with the people from below, who like grassroots work. But now with the camps, it's like finally putting all this discourse of working with the people from below and working, grassroots work into practice. Like finally practicing what a lot of people have been talking about, but never doing things properly.
Do either of you have any specific like moments or memories about organizing in like since the storm, organizing around this project that has sort of just talks about the spirit of the project? Does that make sense? Are there any things that stand out if you were to like sift through your memories and be like, there was this one instance where somebody said this, or a kid came up with and like was able to find a toy, or family members united, or whatever?
So we had we have so many cases and so many there was this guy Daniel. He was very bully, very very violent behavior, always menacing people, or always bullying people, always wanted to like we work with what we call like healthy, how to say that? ¿Cómo dice eso? Sana convivencia, like healthy co-living system where we talk everything through. We don't since we don't like violence and we don't allow violence, so we talk everything through.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy was always insulting people and doing things the way going against everybody. And all the members of the camp, all the volunteer people, all the people that worked here were feeling bad about it, and we collectively talked to him and we challenged him to change his behavior. And we asked him like if he didn't change his behavior, we won't serve him again. Like if he didn't really change his behavior, because he was not nice. Like he was not cooperating, but he was always there. Like it was a little bit paradoxical. No, he wanted to be part of, but he didn't want it to be part of. Mm-hmm. And we asked him, like he had insulted a lot of people and people that work in the kitchen. So this guy, we told him to leave. Well, we together as a group, we confronted him. There was a person like porte-parole that spoke in the name of everybody. And we asked him to leave. Then he came back like several weeks after to excuse himself for his behavior. So he had a time to think about all the things that had happened. And by himself he came back and
Daniel came to apologize for his behavior, but he came to apologize with the spokesperson that the camp selected. Mm-hmm. And the spokesperson told him that it wasn't with him that he has to apologize. He has to apologize with the whole group, with the whole camp. And if he wanted to do that, we could, hold a meeting and call everyone to a meeting so he can apologize to the whole group. But it wasn't necessary that he did it at that moment. That if he wanted to think about, and when he felt that he was ready to do it, so he could do it. So he said that he was going to do it at that moment. So we called a meeting of everyone at the camp, and he apologized to everyone. And after that moment, he changed his behavior towards the group.
That's cool that he actually took the time and the initiative to be like, don't want to be a bully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was not with repression and, with pushing, with using the same behavior that he had, that he decided to change. It was, by giving him options and giving him the power to make a decision, to make a change.
I mean, it shows a degree of investment in him as a human being, as opposed to just someone that is receiving a service. Like if it's a relationship of, a restaurant, or which I've worked in plenty of restaurants, and it's still unacceptable for people who are receiving services to treat people like that. But to just relate to it as if it was, or the people as if they're just there to serve, as opposed to human beings in a community. So that's really cool that Danielle was able to take the opportunity Anyway, I'm repeating myself. That's cool.
That's a memory.
That's a good memory.
Huh? What was that?
I said that's a good memory.
Yes, it is.
A little bit of history on the space. The Centro in Caguas started in a squat, correct? And your social media notes that you're in a new space. Can you talk about the physical space and how the authorities have related to it? And there was a recent break-in that y'all suffered near Christmas, right?
Yes. The first 2 months of our operations, we were using a building lent by this community art gallery, and after we find a better place, because the other place, the infrastructure was very deteriorated. It's been a month and a half that we've been working on this new place that we reopened in this new place. It's just across from the street.
But the infrastructure was not good for a kitchen. So we did some scouting, and we found this place that was abandoned for more over 30 years, very nearby. And this place was before the Bureau of the Social Security. So we decided to rescue this place. So when we started the rescuing labors, the police intervened, the municipal police, and they asking us if we had permission to be there, and asking us our names. So we decided that our names were Centro de Apoyo Mutuo. So they were menacing us of getting us into jail if we didn't give our names. And we kept saying that our names were Centro de Apoyo Mutuo. So that was the beginning of the confrontation with the municipal police. I don't know if Kique wants to say something about it, but because we were all there, we had all the support from everybody in the community that if this place was abandoned for 30 years, we have the permission of the hunger of the people that we were serving, and that was our name. It's like, my name is Legion, that's our name. That's Centro de Apoyo Mutuo. We are, all of us are the center.
So, the thing with the police is the municipal police. So they managed to arrest 2 of us if we didn't give our names. So when we felt that menace, we called for other members of the camp and other workers of the camp. So at some point there were only 2 police officers against 15 of us, and one of us was recording. That's the video that you see on our Facebook page. When they saw themselves on the number by us, they called reinforcements. there came more guards, more police officers, and they tried to negotiate with us, like we have permission to be there, and said, you're not the owner of this place, so you don't. There's nothing that you have to ask about this place, because the private owner has not say a word about what we're doing, and has not say anything in 30 years about the building. So there's nothing that you have to. If we can be here, you neither.
Mm-hmm.
And when the police knew that they could not, the negotiation was not going anywhere, so they called the municipality, like this functionary that she works on, like human development, something like that, human development office, something like that. It's the office in charge of dealing with human resources in the municipality and abandoned building and all that. So she, when the lieutenant was spoken with her, she told us to pass by to her office, and we say no, we ain't going nowhere. If she wants to talk, she has to come here, because we're working. So if she wants to talk with us, she has to leave the air conditioning of her office and come here. And she came, and she started try to negotiate with us, but she tried to convince us that the municipality could make the movements to acquire the building and then lend it to us, like in a 10 years or in some kind of contract, so we can be there. And we say no, there's nothing that you don't have to do nothing. We already here. This property belongs to us. It belongs to the people that work on it, and we're working on it to provide a service that you haven't been providing to people since Maria, since the aftermath of Maria. So we're doing that. Suddenly you appear, the state suddenly appears, and it's not to facilitate things, it's to put obstacles on us. So after that, push back and forth with the municipality and the police officer, they left us, because is this place from the municipality? And the answer was no. And we said, there's nothing to do right here. There's nothing that you can do right here. So just leave out. And when the owner, the private owner, says something, then we deal with that. But there's nothing that we have to negotiate and deal with you.
So does the Centro de Apoyo Mutuo in Caguas, does it relate to other mutual aid centers around Puerto Rico? Is there like a sharing of resources between, say, the CAM and Bucarabones Unidos or other parts of the island?
Yeah, we're on that.
Yeah, some other camps were influenced by our efforts. Like, for instance, some other camps, the people that initiated other camps worked for 2 or 3 days in our camp, and they left with the ideas and the practice and the experience, and then founded other camps. So we inspired other camps, and at the beginning, everyone was very autonomous. We didn't have too much relationship. But now we are working on creating a web of camps. We are right now working on that. For instance, we already had a month ago, like a first encounter of different camps, where we exchanged our experiences. And this weekend we will have a meeting and to give continuity to proposals that, or working on giving continuity to the proposals that arose in that first encounter.
So I'd like to shift gears a little bit to talk again a little bit about the relationship between Boriken and the United States. So Boriken or Puerto Rico is an unincorporated territory of the U.S. or under the U.S.'s jurisdiction and control. Now, although the U.S. government wouldn't use this phrasing, I think we have during this conversation, many would describe the relationship between the U.S. and Puerto Rico as a colonial one. Can you all talk a little bit more about how you view that and how, in the aftermath of these storms and the lack of follow-through by FEMA and other agencies? You mentioned, Kique, for instance, that it was like with the storms, the veil had been drawn away and it became clear what the colonial relationship was. Do you feel like, is that a conversation that people are having at the Centro de Apoyo Mutuo?
Not yet, because we're dealing with day-to-day working, but at some point we will have to address that. You know, we do things step by step.
Like somehow we have talked about like the lack of efficiency of the state. We have discussed a lot of news, and we have discussed some subtle way or political views on what's happening on the government not giving away the food that were in the ports, and all that kind of people being hungry in other municipalities. And we've been sharing like the deficiencies, the big deficiencies of the government, but we haven't yet really tried to speak about the colonial status and this colonialist relationship between the U.S. and Puerto Rico.
Do you hear much in the way of conversations around the Centro or in the community about what kind of alternatives projects like the Centro offer instead of the normal capitalist like relationships around self-care and housing and food and childcare and things like that?
This is the beginning. So everything is the Centro de Apoyo Mutuo, the camps, and this is an example of that. It's a new world emerging, so it's not quite defined yet. So this is just the beginning. So that's why I told you that we're doing this step by step. So people are used to the old things, to the old world, that at sometimes they confuse us with the government or receiving help of the government, and we have to make clear that we are independent from the government, that we're not receiving any resources or any government, that we just came before the government and because of the lack of government. So there's still confusion in people about what we do, because what we're doing is new. It's new in the country because we have been taught since the U.S. invasion in 1898 we cannot self-govern ourselves, that we cannot self-organize ourselves, that we need a more illustrated country, a more developed country to make decisions for us. And what we are demonstrating is that we can do it if we self-organize our resources. So what we're doing is new in that context, and imagine it's like the myth of the cave of Plato. You have people used to see the same images that were just shadows on a cave, and they took those images, those shadows, for reality. And even if you take them outside the cave and and show to them the real images, the forecast shadow, they will not believe it. So it's an ongoing work, and this is just the beginning.
Have you been receiving any pushback from big nonprofits against your autonomous organizing, or have you just been flying under the or under the radar because they're just not paying attention to the actual needs of people in your community?
No, we haven't had any kind of trouble with the nonprofit organizations, at least for the moment. We have received donations from small nonprofit organizations, but the big ones we have not had any donations or pushbacks. Yeah, pushbacks for the moment.
Are you aware of folks in Puerto Rico or in Caguas receiving solidarity or mutual aid or communication? Like you mentioned that there's been more communication between different mutual aid projects in Boriquen. Have you been hearing from other Gulf solidarity groups like around Dominican Republic or from Cuba or anywhere else in the region since the storm that's outside of the United States?
No, because one of the effects of colonialism is to uncommunicate us with the rest of the Antile, with the rest of the Caribbean. Like we are on the radar of U.S. imperial, and we are disconnected from the rest of the island, of the Antile. That's one of the effects of colonialism.
So I guess that thing, the Jones Act, that was brought up in the media a bunch when directly after the storms, the current presidential administration refused to allow in boats that weren't flying American flags or that weren't based from the U.S. That's the impact of that, is you couldn't necessarily get aid from these other places because it all has to be siphoned through the United States empire to get to you.
Yeah, it was established in 1917. So in that, like in instances like that law, you could see very clearly the colonial relationship between the U.S. empire and Puerto Rico as a colony. For instance, the Jones Act it is a law that was not abolished when they supposedly resolved our colonial status in 1952. The 1952 law that created the Commonwealth did not abolish that old colonial law of 1917, the Jones Act.
So winding up these questions, I wanted to ask like an ideological question. Anarchists and autonomist anti-capitalists will have many sympathies with the Centro based on the shared tenets of mutual aid, of solidarity, community, and self-determination. Is there a relationship between any of these political tendencies and the Centros, or did the model...
Which one?
Well, between anarchism or like autonomous socialism or anti-capitalism or communism and the Centros, or I mean, like Christian ideas of solidarity. I mean, you used a metaphor right there that was straight out of the Bible earlier on with the teaching people to fish. But did the model? You said the model was already coming out of the work of the Centro de Desarrollo movement, the CDP. But is there like much of an affiliation as far as y'all can tell between anarchism or like communist organizing, autonomous communist organizing, and how the Centros operate?
In some of us, we have that background. Yes, in ideologically, but not all of us share the same references, ideological references. Or we exchange those ideological references. But you know what you can say that all those um, ideological references have in common is solidarity as the main base of organizing a human society, not selfishness, not the pursuit of wealth as a synonym of the pursuit of happiness. You know, solidarity as the base of human society. All those ideological references have that in common. So we use what we need, but we don't identify with any of it.
In a way, because you're bringing together community and it's not like a political campaign, I guess, and identifying with a specific political ideology would just like limit your possibilities.
What is the question?
Well, I guess, would you see it as like trying to, if y'all were trying to take a specific political position, it would be exclusionary, right? It wouldn't necessarily reflect the vision of all the people that are coming together to solve the need of doing for self, and also because it would be a limitation on solving that immediate problem of how do we get ourselves fed, how do we get ourselves seeing each other face to face and talking, and how do we fix our houses?
Yeah, kind of. You know, the thing is that a lot of organizations works like the recruiting process is that you have to share same views and thoughts about the interpretation of reality. And if you don't have those political views or thoughts, you're not welcome. And we focus ourselves more on transforming people because we believe in the capacity of humans to transform themselves by working and by learning to organize, learning to self-organize. And, in the process of self-organizing and transforming themselves, we can talk about politics. Instead of ideas being requirements to have certain ideas or be certain politics as requirements to work together, we like to do it otherwise. Work together first, and in the meantime, start talking about ideas, political ideas, and politics.
Well, how can listeners find out more about the projects in Caguas, like the Centro de Apoyo Mutuo, and how can also what sort of, like, if listeners have the ability to offer solidarity from outside, do you need volunteers? Do you need specific technical things? Do you have a place for people to send money if that's something they can do?
Yeah, absolutely. If people want to know a little bit more about our work, they can look out the page in Facebook, Centro de Apoyo Mutuo Caguas. Also, we have a lot of work to do here in the place we are rescuing. We want to start a urban garden in the roof. So we'll be needing people able to help us design and think this garden. We are always needing volunteers. So for a lot of things like painting or helping us distribute. If people would like to donate money, we have a PayPal account. It's spelled CDCECPR@gmail.com. Yeah, if not, you can just at that same email or at the Facebook Messenger, you can just send us a message and we'll send the information required.
And for folks without Facebook, I've been reading articles on y'all and other projects at mutualaiddisasterrelief.org. Is that a good place for people to go to?
True. Yeah, people from Mutual Aid Disaster Relief have been working with us a lot, and they have all our information and our contacts. So yeah, through them you can also contact us.
Gracias, Emilu and Kique. Like, thank you so much for giving so much of your time and energy, and I wish you all the luck and all the solidarity that's possible.
Thank you very much. Thanks to you for the interest.
Over the last 4 years, I've been lucky enough to be able to present viewpoints from anarchists participating in the Zone à Défendre, aka the Zone to Defend, or the ZAD, at Notre-Dame-des-Landes in western France's Brittany region. The struggle against the airport and planned expansion of the transit system, spreading of strip malls and gas-ups along the way, and the expansion of the port at Saint-Nazaire began some 50 years ago. These struggles against the project took many forms until in 2009 a land occupation ensued, resulting in the militarized deployment of police a few times to evict the tree sits and the full 8-mile square of the marshlands of Notre-Dame-des-Landes, resultant reoccupations, large demonstrations in the nearby city of Nantes, from which the existing airport would be moved, and solidarity acts of organizing of sabotage against the main contractor of the mega project, Vinci. The members of the ZAD struggle, as it developed, co-organized with those resisting megaprojects by Vinci and other institutions around Europe and North Africa, including in some cases the direct inspiration and use of the name and model of the ZAD and DDL in other places, such as Teste. On January 17, 2018, French Prime Minister Édouard Philippe of the French Republican Party declared that the airport project at Notre-Dame-des-Landes was definitively cancelled. To speak on the meaning of this, we welcome back Camille to the show. Thanks a lot for taking the time to chat, Camille.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us what all this means? Has the ZAD in fact won? Is the airport cancelled? Really? For all time? Forever and ever? Amen?
That brings me so much joy. Yes, the airport project.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Yeah! Finally! So it's not that exactly that the ZAD has won, but there is no more airport project. And it's not like on hold and will be revived. It's like actually over. And so that's a victory, because people have been fighting for that for the past 50 years, at least a partial victory. And on top of that, there's the symbolism of the state backing down in the face of resistance. The text of what the Prime Minister said was that the airport is canceled, the farmers can stay, so people who've been squatting their own land for the past couple of years, as of Wednesday, can stay there. It's their land back. And everyone who was expropriated by the state, so got their land taken by eminent domain, they also get their land back. So that's a point of contention with the movement, who said that only people who didn't touch the money could get their land back. And then the legalized farming and agricultural projects and small businesses that have been started by squatters can also stay. So the road has to be cleared in a week. The barricade road, that's really symbolic. That's been barricaded since the evictions, so for the past 5.5 years. And whoever doesn't have a legal farming project and has to leave by March 30th or get evicted. So all the talk of like, the ZAD's getting evicted, that's in the text of this declaration. So the being evicted, if we're not gone by March 30th, is part of the declaration of the government. And so the state is really trying to save face, and it seems like they're trying to avoid like a big confrontation. But they have surrounded the ZAD with police, so there's about 500 riot cops deployed in all the surrounding towns since Tuesday, and there's rumors of 1,000 more coming this week. But it's like the state is trying to divide the unity of the movement and like play on internal divisions, notably around the barricade road.
So it seems like by specifically stating that the projects that have been legalized that are operating as small farms on the ZAD, that they're allowed to stay. Yeah, it seems like an example of what you're talking about with playing on internal divisions, right? With Copan, or I think that's what it's called. If like the internal movement of small farmers or whatever that's been building infrastructure and getting folks involved in farm to table projects and things like that is able to be directed or have their attentions directed or told at least that they'll be safe from government incursion, then that they're less likely, according to the government's thought, to support people that are actually trying to stop the development of the land?
Yeah, that is the goal. That's what the state is trying to do. But there's also people who are squatting who have started farming projects that are legalized. And they were directly referenced in the declaration of the government saying they can stay. And so it seems like there's a loophole that's open where if people have some sort of like superficial legal status, they can stay and keep doing whatever they were doing.
But it's suddenly the government coming in and operating to determine who has legitimacy to be on the space and who doesn't on a space that has been legitimate by its taking of space, right?
Yeah, and most of the people the movement is not just the ZAD, it's the movement against the airport, so it's lots of different groups that don't agree with each other, most of whom are liberal. And so people have reacted in lots of different ways, but at least in the media and publicly, the different liberal groups have been saying, we've been fighting together for a long time, like we've needed you and now you need us, and so like we're going to fight together even though we don't agree. And everyone is very conscious of the strategy of the state to try and divide, and so everyone is trying to take that into account. I mean, it's shitty.
So you lied when you said forever and ever amen.
Forever and ever amen, no airport.
Okay.
Not forever and ever amen, the ZAD is on autonomous space.
So can you go into a little more detail about the road? Why is the road a sort of contentious issue? And is it the road that has so many pictures of like the barricades set up on it that shows up in press packets?
Yeah. The road with all the barricades, with the towers, with the houses on the road, all of that. Everything's covered in brambles. And so that road has been barricaded since, or not barricaded, but like has partial barricades on it since 2012. It's a point of contention with people who live in the surrounding area because they used to take that road to work and now they have to go really far out of the way. So it's like in lots of ways we interact with people who live in the surrounding area, and we interact with them in lots of ways, and people are involved in projects on the ZAD, and there's lots of links with people, and that's kind of the main complaint is that that road is blocked. And so the state is playing on that. The state also blocked the road themselves. In 2013, they came and dug trenches with bulldozers at either end and put big, like, enormous rock there. And then we reopened it with tractors because people were saying that if the state wants it closed, then we want it open. And so now the state is saying, you have to open the road and it has to be able to be circulating because you're like impeding free speech. But it's actually them that closed it. So it's kind of ironic. But anyway, lots of people want to keep it like it is and say the state. And lots of other people say, like, we can't have everything. And if we give them this, then maybe we get to keep the rest of it. So that's kind of the argument of the moment, which is it feels after so long of getting whatever we wanted to be in this like kind of weird negotiating place. But that's what's going on.
Probably the road will get cleared.
Probably the road will get cleared this week, but cleared means right now it has speed bumps, partial barricades, and houses on it. And the plan of people is to clear everything except for the houses, and then the local government is going to pay to put speed bumps back and also partial barricades. So it's losing in symbolism, but it's not actually losing in the road changing very much.
So some of the loftier goals of the movement have included no airports at all, being at war with the world that threatened to come with the Vinci mega project. So with this new step taken by the state, does it seem like maybe the energies that were present in the ZAD movement at Notre-Dame-des-Landes might diffuse into other struggles or move momentum elsewhere?
So what all the different parts of the movement have announced as like a continuation is not the airport is over, we all leave, but the airport is over, we want to stay here and work together and live together. And so there's these 6 points that were made that basically say everyone gets to stay and we keep the diversity of the movement. So the continuation of the movement that's desired is to get all of the land and that we manage it ourselves and everything that happens on it in an assembly that involves everyone. But in terms of this struggle having things coming out of it that affect other movements, well, there's always been kind of like, interesting constellations and combinations of people and ideas there, and some cross-pollination. But the past couple of years, it's mostly been agriculture and small farmer movements, and so that will probably continue to be a big theme. And then in the past year or so, in relationship to the social movements against the Loi Travail, the work law, in the spring of 2016 and this past fall, there's been cooperation and organizing between groups on the ZAD and the syndicalists, especially with different groups of workers at the current airport in Nantes who also don't want it to move. And so we found like this weird allyship there. And the workers against the airport organized May Day this year and a bunch of strikes and demos this fall that were pretty interesting. And there's also links that are getting a lot stronger between collectives of people of color who's lost family members to police violence and who are doing organizing against police and racism in their communities, and people on the ZAD who are mostly white organizing together. And there's a lot of back and forth and trying to fight racism and the existence of the police. So that's like a interesting thing that's come out of the ZAD, and that having so much space, like we're able to make place for that, or like have room for big gatherings.
And speaking of big gatherings, February 10th, there's going to be a mass gathering that's at least been called for on the ZAD. Can you talk about what you know about that? And also, is that the kind of thing that's going to be impeded by an encirclement of riot cops?
Normally when there's a big mobilization, the cops will leave because it looks bad, and they want all of the liberals to think that we're like making it repression. So I doubt the cops will be around for that. But it's a big, it's like a big mobilization. Probably going to be a lot of people, probably going to be a big party. The idea is to like have a big celebration and like plan the future together.
Would you share some of those quotes that you thought were, so cute coming out of the mouths of politicians?
Okay. So first off is the president of the region, who's like our super big enemy and spent 60,000 euros of state money last year to make a smear campaign against us. And he says, it's the state giving up because it's the victory of the Zadistes. They won. Today in France, violence pays off. You can, by using the most violent methods, block a project which clearly won a referendum. The authority of the state is being mocked. And then there's another politician who says, I am very, very sad. The politic of like zoning and deciding what goes where, the state deciding what goes where, has been abandoned. And from now on, all those who try to make a project of development, even a small project, will know that they can no longer count on the state. And then there's someone else who says the state is giving in front of hordes of thugs who burn police cars, throw rocks at the forces of order, and who are busy celebrating, singing, and dancing on the ruins of the authority of the state, which is my favorite, I think.
That should end up on the flyer for the party.
Come dance on the ruins of the authority of the state.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another one saying that General de Gaulle would roll over in his grave, and the word of the state today, from now on, means nothing, and that this person wants to know how much that's going to cost the state. He wants it published because they're supposed to give Volfi, the construction company, $350 million if they cancel the project, which they did, in penalties. Not only have they been fighting for 50 years and they just had to cancel it, but they also have to pay $350 million in damages.
Well, congratulations on the success of a movement. You've just undermined the legitimacy of the authority of the state, as well as drained its coffers.
Yeah, it's kind of best case scenario. It's like if we get evicted.
Except a bunch of Vinci, but like I'd like to reiterate that the ZAD of Notre-Dame-des-Landes and the movement associated with it, while not perfect, has still been a huge inspiration to people around the world. The model of occupation and defense has reminded many movements worldwide of the connection of our fight against some of the same governments and corporations enacting the violence of the capitalist development. So, yeah, Just, y'all are awesome.
So are you.
Ah, the ZAD called me awesome. Yes.
Oh no. One of his
The voice of the ZAD. I'm kidding. Well, Camille, thanks so much for taking this time. And again, congratulations. And we'll keep up on as much as we can on how things develop down the road, so to speak.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me.